The old St. Cassian's orphanage stood on a hill overlooking the town. Its shadow stretched long and cold as the sun began to set. Inside, the air was always damp and musty, smelling of old books and forgotten things. Tonight, it held another scent: fear. 10-year-old Daniel pressed his face against the cold glass of his dormitory window. He watched the last sliver of sunlight disappear below the horizon. A shiver ran down his spine, even though it wasn't cold. Something wasn't right. He wasn't alone in his fear. The other children were restless too. Whispers of shadows moving in the hallways, of voices calling their names in the dead of night, spread like wildfire. Even the nuns seemed afraid tonight. Daniel pulled his thin blanket closer. He closed his eyes, desperately wishing for sleep to take him. But the whispers seemed to grow louder in the darkness. They slithered under the door, wrapping around his heart with icy fingers. Sister Mary Agnes, her face a mask of worry, hurried down the hallway. Her rosary beads clicked rhythmically against her worn habit. She stopped at each dormitory door, peeking inside, her heart heavy with a dread she couldn't name. The children were her responsibility. She had vowed to protect them, to be their light in the darkness. But tonight the darkness felt overwhelming. It pressed against the walls of the orphanage, threatening to consume them all. Father Michael, the young priest assigned to St. Cassian's, met her at the end of the hall. His youthful face, usually so full of life, was pale and drawn. "The bishop was right," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Something evil has taken root here." Sister Mary Agnes clutched her crucifix, the silver cold against her palm. "We have to protect the children," she murmured, her voice filled with a desperate hope. "God will protect us." Deep beneath the orphanage, in the cold, damp cellar, lay the heart of the darkness. A hidden chamber, sealed centuries ago by the founders of St. Cassian's, held a terrifying secret. And tonight, that secret was stirring. The seal, once strong and vibrant with holy power, had weakened over time. Neglect, doubt, and the whispers of forgotten evil had taken their toll. Now, a single crack marred its surface, like a spiderweb spreading across glass. Through that crack, a faint orange glow pulsed, casting eerie shadows that danced on the damp stone walls. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of sulfur and decay. The whispers grew louder, transforming into guttural growls that echoed in the oppressive silence. The seal was failing, and soon, the evil it held captive would be unleashed. Little Emily, the youngest in the orphanage at only 6 years old, woke with a gasp. Her tiny room was filled with an unnatural chill, making her breath fog in the air. A sense of dread, heavy and suffocating, settled upon her. She tried to call out for Sister Mary Agnes, but her voice caught in her throat. A strange pressure built behind her eyes, blurring her vision. She rubbed them with her tiny fists, but it didn't help. Then she saw them. 2 glowing orange eyes, like burning coals, appeared in the darkness at the foot of her bed. They stared at her with a hunger that chilled her to the bone. Terror, raw and consuming, paralyzed her. Emily's small body began to tremble uncontrollably. The air around her crackled with an unseen energy. A low growl, barely audible at first, seemed to emanate from her own throat. Emily was no longer alone in her body. A discordant melody, filled with jarring notes and unsettling harmonies, drifted through the hallways of St. Cassian's. It wasn't the gentle hymns usually played on the old piano in the music room. This music was different. It was chaotic, filled with a dark and frantic energy that set teeth on edge. The children, their faces pale and drawn, huddled together in their beds. They covered their ears, but the music seemed to seep through their fingers, worming its way into their minds. It whispered of forgotten nightmares and awakened primal fears. The nuns, their faces etched with worry and fear, hurried from room to room, trying to comfort the terrified children. But even their faith was being tested. The music seemed to mock their prayers, its disharmony a blasphemous counterpoint to their desperate pleas for divine intervention. The source of the music remained a mystery. The piano in the music room sat silent, its keys untouched. The music seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a symphony of madness that, well, heralded the coming darkness. Father Michael, his youthful face now a mask of grim determination, stood in the center of the main hall. He held aloft a silver crucifix, its surface reflecting the flickering light of the few candles that still burned. Around him, the other nuns and priests gathered, their voices joining his in a desperate prayer. "The power of Christ compels you," Father Michael boomed, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged hall. "Begone, foul creature, and return from whence you came." Latin incantations, ancient words of power passed down through generations of holy men and women, filled the air. The candles flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the walls. The smell of incense, thick and cloying, mingled with the ever-present scent of fear. But the prayers seemed to have little effect. The music continued, its discordant melody growing louder, drowning out the voices of the desperate priests and nuns. The darkness was winning. Sister Mary Agnes rushed into the small chapel, her heart pounding in her chest. She had last seen Emily being dragged towards the chapel by an unseen force, the little girl's screams echoing through the darkened hallways. The chapel was eerily silent, the usual peace replaced by a suffocating stillness. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of sulfur and something else, something metallic and cloying. Sister Mary Agnes felt a chill run down her spine. She saw Emily first. The little girl lay sprawled on the floor in front of the altar, her eyes wide and vacant, her limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Blood stained her white nightgown, forming a gruesome halo around her small body. Sister Mary Agnes gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. Emily was gone. In her place lay a chilling reminder of the evil that had invaded their sanctuary. The orphanage, once a place of refuge, had become a hunting ground. The children, their innocence no match for the evil that stalked them, were picked off one by one, their terrified screams echoing through the halls. The nuns and priests, their faith shaken to its core, fought back with prayers and holy water, but to no avail. The evil was too strong, fueled by centuries of darkness and despair. It moved through the shadows, twisting and contorting, always a step ahead of its pursuers. Doors slammed shut on their own, their metal hinges groaning in protest. Religious icons shook violently on the walls before crashing to the floor, their glass shattering into 1,000 pieces. The very structure of the orphanage seemed to groan under the weight of the evil that had taken root within its walls. St. Cassian's, once a beacon of hope, had become a sanctuary of screams. Father Michael, his face now a mask of exhaustion and despair, stood in the ruins of the chapel. The once sacred space was desecrated, the altar overturned, and the air thick with the stench of death. Around him, the remnants of his order lay scattered, victims of the unholy terror that had gripped the orphanage. He had failed them, failed the children he had sworn to protect, failed the nuns and priests who had fought bravely by his side, failed God himself. He sank to his knees, tears streaming down his face, his spirit broken. "Looking for this, Father?" A voice rasped behind him. Father Michael turned, his blood turning to ice. Standing in the doorway, bathed in an unholy light, was Sister Mary Agnes. But it wasn't the kind, gentle nun he knew. Her eyes burned with an infernal light, her lips curled into a cruel smile, her voice a chilling parody of its former self. "The children were merely a payment," she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. "A down payment on a debt long overdue." She took a step closer, her shadow stretching towards him like a grasping claw. "And now, Father, it's your soul the devil demands."